We have now been joined by Leah. Leah, we did a little bit of an introduction in your absence earlier, um, but I'm going to just ask you to start off telling me a little bit about your experience of home education, kind of how you came to home education, and then we'll take it from there. I will just spotlight you. But welcome, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. Good morning, everybody. Everyone's up and at 'em on a Saturday morning. That's amazing. Yes, I'm Leah Boden. I have four children now, adults and older teenagers. Well, mid to older teenagers. And I started home educating in the early 2000s. We home educated for um, 18 years, and I was kind of researching it and studying various pedagogies for the past 20 years, really. And yeah, my introduction to home education began actually in the States. I was at Bible college in the States and met some children who looked me in the eye and spoke to me as an adult. And I remember thinking, "Ooh, this is quite," they were so interesting. I remember them telling me about a book they were reading, and I said to a friend who was with me, one, why are they in this building during the day? And there's something different about them. And she said they're obviously, it was in America. She said they're homeschooled. And I said, what's that? And so I was single at the time in my very early 20s. And that really was kind of what I call the seed conversation of thinking, that's an option and how wonderful, and began to just ponder it. And then obviously, fast track to being married to Dave, beginning our family. And the moment I remembered that conversation was I didn't know any other home educating families at all. And it was my eldest daughter's first day in the nursery school that was attached to the primary school that she was going to go to. And I think she may have been in the either nursery year or the reception year. That's all she did in the end. And I remember walking down the street with her in uniform, and she had a little book bag, and and it's so tiny and this school uniform on. And I remember thinking, hang on, I didn't want to do this. This wasn't really part of my plan, or our plan. And thus began a real kind of deep dive into the legalities of home education. So remember, this is the early 2000s. And in my early days, one of the first people I met in Coventry who home educated was our lovely Juliet here. So, and she had got a good few years under her belt, was quite new in the country actually, because I remember Kyla being
Yeah.
2 years old and the most beautiful, talkative 2 year old I had ever met. Again, another great advertisement for home education. And yeah, we took our time because Dave and I wanted to get on the same page. My particular deep dive was into the teaching philosophy and pedagogy of Charlotte Mason, and I went down a rabbit hole all those years ago and have never come back up really. So we've just finished formally home educating. We're no longer doing that. My children have taken various paths. I mean, we can get into that, Juliet, whenever you
Yeah.
want, but my children have taken various paths. Um, Especially when it's come to GCSEs. One went all the way through at home. We did, different hybrid models, but I home educated him up until he was 16, 17. And then he went into sixth form college. All my other children have opted to go into a either a year 10 joining like an academy to do GCSEs, or my youngest has gone to a local academy here. So I'm officially no longer a practitioner of those values and ideas. I actually miss it every day. And
Yeah.
that's another story, isn't it? The kind of weird, I would call it a little bit of grief, really, because I really relished those years, loved those years so much, and valued why we were doing it, the impact I saw on our family and my children, and also just loved sharing about it and encouraging other mothers and fathers on the journey as well. So, yeah. I hope that's enough to get us going, Juliet.
Yes, definitely. What I'd like to really, I think a lot of people would like to know is also what are what are some of the lessons that you've had from home educating your children, things like aha moments for you.
Mm. Yeah, so many, so many. I think the deep privilege of home educating is, well, there are various things, but one, walking alongside your children on their educational journey. I think the traditional approach to education, where they are sent away into a classroom with children their own age, you might get to see the homework book, or you might get to kind of talk at the weekend, but actually growing with them and learning with them. And lots of home educators say this, and I honestly say this. I went to university, I've got a degree, I've done all the educational journey, but I really, truly, hand on heart, can say my education began when I started home educating my children.
True.
There were
Yeah.
things I learned about history, and there were passions that kind of came alive in me that I knew were there from childhood. I love art and culture and poetry, music. They were the things that kind of were put in me as a child through my family,
Yes.
but weren't nurtured through the education system. And I got to do that journey with my children. That was a big aha moment. Was like, wow, people really miss out on a lot when you don't get to do this alongside them. I think also being able to cater to their individual needs was really special for us. So Dave and I always said, each child an individual, whatever. We're not just going to do this one set thing, and we'll do, this is the way we do it, but we're going to observe our children and talk to them and engage them in the journey,
Mm.
and then look at the alternative things that they can, the ways they can walk out their interests and giftings. Now, the world is so different now to how it was when we first started. There are so many more things available, and the community is so much larger. And I'm grateful the community I did have. But that was a huge aha moment when, my younger children were starting to grow up, and they were so different from the older ones. And here I was thinking, well, I've got 10 years under my belt. I know what I'm doing. And I didn't, because each child needed and should have had, they deserve to have this. Okay, let's think about you. Let's look at you. That was brilliant. But also, I think, Juliet, there were days when I realized, there might have been days when formal learning, as people might understand it, the maths lessons and the whatever, and the kind of doing the teaching or the learning, didn't necessarily happen, because the needs of the children, emotional needs, the days when they're just having a big paddy and they need you, those days, I learned how to see those as much as part of the educational journey as ticking off the boxes and finishing the books. Because part of that, the privilege of home educating, is the holistic approach to seeing your children grow up and walking alongside them. So if I remember one particular day when one of my children were really struggling, and it kind of taken over the whole day, and it had taken over everything, and in my schooly head, I would have said, we did nothing today. And I remember Dave coming home and saying, how's your day been? And me probably sat crumpled on the bottom step and going, it was terrible. And he said, just talk me through your day. And he said, you know what, that was what you were supposed to do today. That was your most important work. And actually what was going on was, you were able to attend to the emotional development of our child. And again, often in the traditional educational approach, they might be sent in a corner or being put in isolation or whatever, when actually what they needed was nurturing. And I remember that day, that was a huge aha, like, this is just as much as part of the big picture of education as the books and the exams and whatever, that I get to attend to the whole person. And that was wonderful. And I will always treasure that.
Yes, and I think you were very, very much influenced by Charlotte Mason.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
some people may not have heard of Charlotte Mason and that approach, which many home educators have subscribed to. So perhaps you could give us a little bit of information. We have a little bit more time actually, because we've got a bit of a buffer
yeah.
right now. So if you don't mind. giving a bit more
Of
information.
course, I would never mind sharing about Charlotte Mason. So Charlotte Mason was a late 19th century, early 20th century British educator. She was revolutionary in her time when women were really silenced. You've got people like Beatrix Potter, who was an incredible scientist who wasn't allowed to speak up in London because, and she was a contemporary of hers. And Charlotte Mason saw this polarized approach to education where if you had wealth and that kind of legacy, then children had a lot more given to them educationally and a lot more opportunity after went to university. Anything outside of that, the kind of different part of society who were working in factories and mines, they basically got taught maths, a little bit of arithmetic and writing, and then were just put into the workforce. And she saw that happening. She was a teacher's apprentice at the age of 13, pre-working class upbringing herself, and was orphaned by the age she was 17, completely on her own, but forged this path, which her words, for the children's sake, which was in her words, she saw a need for a liberal education for all, liberal in the way of wide and spacious. And she sought to and worked for her whole life so that every child could have the same approach and offered the same things in education. And these ideas of hers were based on the holistic approach to a child. So a child is a whole person, therefore we need to attend to their mind, body, and soul. So she focused on physical things, she focused on the mind being nourished with culture and art and great literature and music, and she very much focused on nature, learning from being outside. And she also, she came away from the kind of traditional approach to, well, what we would see as traditional approach to examination. And she used a method called narration, which is really this feedback loop of being able to read and observe and listen and then tell about it straight away. And that was her way of kind of enabling that learning sticks. Anyway, she started this revolution in the late 19th century, early 20th, and it really did kind of take off into this movement, especially with governesses. There were PNEU, Parents National Educational Union schools all over the UK, and then they grew to be across the world, actually. And after the Second World War or First World War, because of the changes, I guess, in national curriculum and all that kind of stuff, her methods did go out of fashion, I guess we could say. And really, who the people who have brought her back into the forefront of our minds educationally have been home educators. So even though she was British, we got to thank the American home educating movement, who rediscovered her ideas and brought them back into the forefront of her mind. So these,
Fantastic.
I'm just all like, I think it was in the
Oh, that
1980s.
that's perfect because they literally have had the question: are there any books
Yes.
about it you
So
can recommend? And philosophy list. That's
I
literally come up. What can you
that's
recommend about it? What books?
I didn't even read that, Michelle, either. So I can recommend lots of books, but I would be amiss if I didn't recommend mine. So I wrote a book. I had the privilege of writing a book called Modern Miss Mason, and this is Discover How Charlotte Mason's Revolutionary Ideas on Home Education Can Change How You and Your Children Learn and Grow Together. This came out in 2023. So British author, you can get this on Amazon or wherever you buy books from. So that's mine, but you can actually read her books. And if you go on to anywhere you buy your books from, type in Charlotte Mason. These are very old. When they first came out in publication, these are the books that that is what they look like. But many people have brought them out again now. You can even listen to them on Audible. And if anybody's got further questions about the Charlotte Mason philosophy and are interested in using her ideas, just go onto my website, leahboden.com, and you can email me or reach out, whatever, and I can give you. But on my website, Michelle, I have got a whole page of books about and by Charlotte Mason. So people can go through that list and, have a look. But there are many. There are many now. But hopefully people will go and have a look for mine. But yeah.
And websites and other resources.
There's so
Yeah.
much. I mean, if you think, there's a really famous book came out in 1984 called For the Children's Sake, which was using Charlotte's, language, but it was really, it kind of triggered everything going again, bringing her ideas into the forefront of home educators' minds, particularly. And since then, so, if you think that's 1984, a lot of us in the UK started home educating. The kind of movement built back up again from the early 2000s. Then lots of people. Kathy's saying your books are pristine. Kathy, let me tell you, I have actually got 2 copies of them, and this is my note. This is my copy.
That's cheating.
That's
People
for
often
show
will
copy.
people say, hey, so I do have library copies where I can lend them out to people, but that's the realistic.
Okay, well, that's what
Kathy,
mine look like as well.
Yeah.
I feel better now.
Don't worry, that's what they actually look like. And I do, but when a new kind of version comes out, I'll try and buy Home Education or Volume 6 of Philosophy of Education, just to see how and basically they've made the margins bigger and all that kind of stuff. But yes, I'm sure yours and mine and yours look very similar. Don't worry.
I just want to say, I think I even have a mention in your book, the Modern Miss
Oh,
Mason book.
you
Yes, I've
absolutely
got
do,
it.
Juliet. Yes, yeah, you do. I mean,
So
Kathy might
you can
actually
buy
as
just for
well.
that,
Yes,
Um,
yeah. If you're gonna get it just to see Juliet's name, yeah, I think you
um,
might get a couple of mentions in there,
yeah, and I
Juliet.
think perhaps and I think you're very involved globally as well. You sometimes get to
Yeah.
speak in the United States and that
Oh,
kind of
I
thing. Yeah,
do a lot.
yeah.
Yeah. I was there twice this year in Chicago and in Minnesota, and got to speak at the Living Education Retreat. And and I've got a podcast and a Substack membership. I mean, basically, her ideas, even though I'm not currently, I'm not home educating myself at the moment, her ideas, I hope, will stay with me for the rest of my life and really do have formed a lot of my own way of learning and continuing to be a lifelong learner. So I'm really passionate about that and love to help others on that journey as well.
Now I had to nip out for a little, what do you call it?
A
Comfort
comfort
break.
break.
Yeah. But did you mention that very famous quote by Charlotte Mason about all children are born persons? Did you mention that? Because
I
that's
did
such a good
say
one.
about, I
Yeah.
didn't, yeah,
Yeah.
I did talk about that. Yeah, that all, yeah, that kind of all holistic approach that she had to childhood. That's so important, isn't it? One of my favorite quotes, I'm looking to the side because it's on my wall, is it may be that the souls of all children are waiting for the call of knowledge to awaken them to delightful living. I love that.
Isn't that
Um,
beautiful?
isn't that beautiful that she believed that actually within every child, they really want to learn in this way. And I truly believe that. And I think even if it's just for a few years, that to
Yeah.
give them that opportunity of a spacious education,
Oof.
it's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I think it's what I found is it did change my attitude, or even towards my own children, changed from when I started to now. And I must say, like, in some ways, there's some regrets because I've got very independent minded children and they don't
No.
ever let me forget it. Um, but I think my role as a mother in the beginning was very much functional. I'm taking
Yes.
care of you, and yes, you're my children and you're cute and all of that. But as you go on in this journey, walking with them on that home educating journey, you come to sort of appreciate them as individuals. As I always say to people, because I have 7 children, and I often, people like think I'm crazy, and I say, well, actually, they're really nice people.
Yeah.
And when they're
Yeah.
little, they're especially entertaining people, but they are people. We don't,
Yes.
we may give birth to a baby, but we're actually birthing a future adult. And I think we always
Yeah.
have to remember that this is they are babies for just such a fraction of that time. They are children for just, such a small uh, proportion of the whole. And to
Mm.
think beyond, to think to long-term goals and not just this thing about the outcomes right now, getting GCSEs right now. It's like, well, where do you want to actually aim to?
That's right.
eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I mean, your children are wonderful people, and mine are too. And I love that we often say to our kids, you know, if you weren't my child, I'd want to hang out with you. You're really fun. And I just love getting to know them in every season of life. And that has been an immense privilege of just having that a little bit more time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it.
So we've had a question on the YouTube channel. So, somebody asking about, she'd love to hear about successful stories of young people who've been home educated and succeeded, either in university afterwards or adult life or a career. And we definitely do have examples, and we will have a few of them joining us today. And Rachel Sarah Lewis, who was with us earlier, is one of those too. And we will have Anne Charles joining us hopefully at 11. If you're here, Anne, I think. And there definitely are these stories. Do you want to give us a quick little rundown of what your children are doing today? Yeah.
Absolutely. Also, depends on your definition of success, but these are all success stories to me. But I have my two adult children who have in their 20s. So my eldest excelled at sixth form, was head girl, as some of yours were, Julia, I'm sure. They all end up doing that, and ended up going on to do chemistry, physics, and biology, and which actually I didn't do a lot of at home, maybe biology, but it's amazing when that happens. And she's basically on a path. She wants to be a paramedic. At the moment, she's moved to Cornwall, and she is working in the care industry to get some kind of experience behind her to then go on to be a paramedic. So she's on that path. My next son always wanted to go into some kind of a trade, which was definitely his strength. And he got a brilliant apprenticeship as an electrician, and he's been studying and working, and he should finish in the next couple of months actually, and so he's just turned 21, and by the end of the year he'll be a fully qualified electrician, pretty much on par with the directors of the company he's been working with. And I'll tell you a little success story for me with him. And what's interesting again about home educated young people is he started that process at 16, 17, and the company weren't used to young lads of that age being able to speak to adults and being able to look them in the eye and shake their hand. And I know, and that's not for every child. I know that's depending on how they are in the world. But in this case, it was a career he was going into, and he had to be able to speak to clients. And they were so used to, I guess, young people just not being able to do that and kind of hiding a little bit and just kind of skulking around. And he repeatedly, in the first few months, he repeatedly had people say to him, "How old are you? How old are you?" Purely because of the way he approached his work and the people he was working with. So they would be, negotiating with a client who needed it wasn't domestic electrical work. It's like big hospitals, colleges, all that kind of stuff. And he would be involved in the conversations. And I remember saying to him, he would tell us these stories when he came home, and I said, "It's all that narration, Joel." It's all the telling back that we got you to do for years and years. But that to me was encouraging, of sending him onto a different path. And then my next one, who's on his final year of sixth form college, is going to be applying for university in December. My youngest is in year 10. So
Yeah.
we're encouraged. We have cheered them all on in their individual journeys, and we're excited for them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can share about with my 7 children. My oldest did a childcare qualification, which she's never used. She works now for in admin with a water company, local water company. My second oldest went off to university, but decided after the first year that it was not taking her in the direction she wanted to go, and she's done a couple of other things, including working at the church that Dave and Leah used to run. And
She's brilliant.
yeah, and she's now working actually for Warwickshire Fire and Rescue's support team. And then my son did a course in college on web design and interactive media, and he is self-employed. He does contract work for different companies, building websites. And then my fourth son, he's had some difficulties because of ADHD, but he has got a job that he's held steadily for 10 years now, I think. And married, having a child soon. I don't know if you knew that, Leah, that they're
You
going
know that.
to
Congratulations. That's amazing.
and then my fifth one, she did a business degree, and she's currently actually got two jobs that work together in the same place, two roles that she's fulfilling. And my sixth one, sixth one now,
Yeah.
she's just moved to Leeds to start her first adult job, having completed her degree in games art. And she will be on later this evening actually with me. And then my youngest is about to start university at Birmingham to do material science and engineering, because he's
Wow.
very much geared towards the engineering
Science.
thing. Yeah. So I'm going to say thank you so much, Leah, for joining us. Feel free to hang around if you want,
My
or pop in
pleasure.
later.
Yeah.
It's been lovely to hear from you, and thank you for joining us. The links to Leah Boden's link should be in the YouTube description. If you want to go and find out more, you can visit her website.